Old video games, VHS, even DVD, if the quality of the resolution is good enough on the progressive scan, interpolated videos, like not in HD, always look better on CRT. Have you ever like turned on your TV to just a black screen at night and it lights up the room? It shouldn't do that. So I have like a 128K Mac with a 9-inch. They weren't designing them to play on your big 52-inch LCD from that essential experience, right? Of like, I'm mostly a word that I've read. I haven't said out loud a lot, so thank you for letting me, experience this. When was the last time you thought about a Trinitron? I'm thinking about Trinitrons all the time. Okay.
Hell yeah.
Sorry, Jess. Video games have gotten good. Or at least video games have gotten better looking. Since the earliest days of games like Pong, the graphic and computing technology that brings games to life has jumped by leaps and bounds. Now, blockbuster console titles like Red Dead Redemption 2 and Elden Ring look so realistic that they could probably pass as movies. Movies, mind you, where the main character keeps accidentally pulling out their gun and shooting someone instead of just saying hello.
How do you do?
Not exactly Oscar bait on a story or an action level, but they mostly resemble movies is the point.
Oi, dickhead. Oh!
Or they're getting there anyway. In fact, for most of their history, video games advances have been technical advances. From the tit-for-tat monochrome of Pong in the 70s to the more colorful landscapes and amazing soundscapes of Asteroid in the 80s, increased computer processing power meant better, prettier, more impressive graphics. By the late 80s, home consoles had displaced arcades, and gamers were free to revel in the resplendent landscapes that served as a backdrop for the timeless stories of an Italian plumber shooting fireballs at a tortoise, or a man walking through a spooky castle with a whip while hunched over. Things kept improving across console generations in multiples of bits until we got to the current generation of games that can, with a passable level of realism, depict details like sunlight or a new dawn's dew on a blade of grass. I mean, we're at the PS9 or 10 now? Games look really, really good. But do they look too good? As games get more and more advanced, there's a corresponding cultural trend that seems keen to rewind all that progress. It's the resurgence of CRT gaming. That is, gaming on old consoles on decades-old cathode ray tube televisions.
I am Amber Carr. I stream under Bloodberry Tart, mostly doing like retro horror and like old games. I do a lot of collaboration with my producer, Emily, to take games that are really difficult to run these days on modern stuff and making them work. In addition to that, in my free time, I am a collector of Super Nintendo, N64, Sega Genesis, like early PlayStation, the sort of 16 to 64-bit era when the CRT was king.
I'm hoping that you can kind of, for an unfamiliar viewer, kind of explain this trend, this interest in older games, like that it feels like is just sort of blossoming more and more every year. What it is about older games that attracts you and attracts, other gamers like you.
Well, I think there's the obvious, there's the nostalgia factor. You get to a certain age, you're like, these things from your youth have a certain magic to them. This is a thing that like Brian Eno said that I thought was really good. It's like, as formats of media phase out, the things that defined the limitations of that become like a signature that almost has like a kind of magic to it. There's a charm and a sort of fanciful presence that comes with the taking a cartridge and plugging it in and doing the mechanics of making it work, replacing physical batteries inside of cartridges that are 20 years old and watching them light up and work again. And pushing those limitations sort of conveys an energy that doesn't feel as present in the modern output of a medium. It sort of feels like you're capturing something that is like beyond what can be captured today. Whether or not that is true is a different question.
Across the gaming community, CRT gaming has become its own subculture. It draws in purists who feel like the experience of gaming nowadays just doesn't quite match the memories of their youth.
I found a Sharp CRT box in a crawl space at an estate sale. Ah, damn.
Even though many of these classic titles have been remastered or ported to newer systems, rendering them ostensibly playable, there is something to be said about the quality of playing old games on old systems the way they were meant to be played.
My father was a big Super Nintendo guy, and so like for the time that I was old enough to hold a controller, I was holding a Super Nintendo controller. And just like the way that the sprites look, and because they could only be so high def, there's a lot of like visual tricks that happen with the way that a CRT has like a domed screen and is a little fuzzier and less high res, that kind of tricks the eye into seeing a better picture than if you see it. And then if you see it now and it's at this beautiful resolution, you look at it and you're like, wow, I don't remember it looking that bad. And the reason is because it didn't really look like that before. before. The tricks that the CRT creates for you as the viewer when you're playing these old games makes them look clearer, perversely, because obviously it's literally less clear, but it makes it look clearer and sharper and more complete in a way because it was designed to be seen on that kind of screen. And those limitations cover up or maybe even enhance some of the things about how those games were made.
This kind of thinking pervades amongst different media enthusiasts. Vinyl evangelists will tell you that music sounds warmer played on a turntable. Cinephiles will travel great distances to see a film on an original 35mm print because they believe that doing so offers a sense of immediacy, as if you're communing directly with the work as it was conceived and produced. With games, there are technical considerations as well. It's all over my head, so this person from YouTube can explain it.
There are a few key factors that drive enthusiasts to seek out the best CRTs they can find. They have next to no input lag, their pixel response times are instantaneous, and they have high contrast ratios since, like an OLED display, the pixels, if you could even call them that, simply do not emit light when they're off. That's right, guys. Before OLED took center stage, CRTs were actually the technology with the outstanding contrast ratio.
But generally, the revival in CRT gaming seems about more than this quality of medium specificity, as it's called.
A little bit of an interesting setup I've got going on here. Yeah, RTX, and yeah, it's running on a CRT monitor. I would say this is my dream CRT monitor, and we're playing it at 100 hertz, and I just got smashed in the head.
This new community of retro gamers have driven up prices in a scarce market of vintage monitors. Gamers pony up wild sums of money to snag the sort of boxy, heavy Trinitron TVs that a decade ago you probably wouldn't bother eyeing a second time if you saw it out on the curb on garbage day.
Video 3. Oh, baby. Oh, yeah.
Once dead tech, these monitors are now hot commodities. You can buy a 13-inch dead stock Zenith CRT TV complete with built-in VHS player from Urban Outfitters for $400. On Amazon, a Magnavox will run you closer to $800 for a Magnavox. On eBay, listings for vintage TVs approach the thousands. I try not to judge, but $3,500 for a Trinitron? Then, of course, there's the market for older gaming systems, older games, and all the red, yellow, and black cables needed to connect everything. It's like paying a premium to travel back in time 15 years.
You know, you have to strike a balance. I think usually there's some remasters that I think I would prefer to play. Like I like the Majora's Mask 3DS remaster better than the original because there was a lot of like little things and like they fixed the swimming controls, you can use the gyroscope to aim, and it fixes a lot of the little things that were frustrating about the original. But I do think that when it comes to visuals, I usually prefer the original. There's just something about seeing the original intention and what it was before it's been cleaned up that I find really rewarding.
So what's up with this stuff? I mean, beyond the modest technological improvements or regressions, is this all just a bunch of commodity fetishism for heavy televisions? Or worse, nothing more than nostalgia?
Here's the TV that started it all, the Sylvania.
On one hand, yearning for things to be and look and feel like they used to be can be a totally normal human feeling, especially with stuff like gaming. Like, have you played a modern AAA title? I have, and I suck at them, and I hate them. Sometimes people like me don't want to mess around with builds or loot crates or any of that stuff. Sometimes people, like me, just want to lob axes at 8-bit bats. Just give me coffee-flavored coffee, you know? But that perfectly natural instinct has, of course, mutated a bit online. Corporations have become aware of it and developed a whole strategy for exploiting it. It's something that journalist and author Grafton Tanner has called retrobait. Basically, it's a way of mining our deep emotional connections to the products of our youth to serve us warmed over variations.
I define retrobait as kind of like an invitation for nostalgic expression. So it invites people to kind of share and express their nostalgic feelings with others. And that's sort of one of the purposes of retrobait. I mean, I also would think of retrobait as any kind of like, you know, rebooted movie that inspires people to get together and talk about like, you know, oh my gosh, remember the original Ghostbusters? That was so good. Now we've got this reboot. However, of course, retrobait isn't just that. It also occurs on these social platforms. The point of which is to like get people to engage. That's the whole business model of social media. So these posts sort of are kind of like, I think of them as bait to get people to stay on the platform and express nostalgia with one another, which ultimately might feel good while you're doing it, but it's ultimately in service to the social platform. And it sort of helps to create what I call these like nostalgic subjectivities. And that's just kind of like a complicated way of saying that it allows people to see themselves as nostalgic people. And one way that retrobait does this is it says two things. It says, one, hey, the past was actually much better. And it was, and we had real conversations and real connections. We don't have that now. And the second thing it says is, but you actually can't go back there. That time is totally past, and we live in a period that's far removed from it. And so it puts people in kind of a painful position to be like, I wish, but I can't go back there.
So, are we retrobaiting? I mean, filming this show in a bar filled with old TVs and Segas and N64 marketing material and a literal wall of VHSs that we pull from for each episode? Is This Exist trying to ring the sweet, juicy, honey-colored nostalgia nodes in your brain for clicks? The answer? Maybe. But we're not really doing it on purpose. We just like this bar, and we're not the worst offenders. Not by a long shot. This yearning and pang can be exploited in other ways, by twisting it into a mood of bitterness and resentment. On social media, some right-wing reactionaries have leveraged this retro fetishism towards their own political ends. Like, look at this tweet from an account that rails against boogeymen like wokeism and postmodernism. Is this a genuine fear that the world where you hung out in a messy bedroom playing N64 surrounded by Pokemon cards and Jurassic Park posters is truly disappearing? How? People literally still play N64 in this bar, and I'm sure people have come here to play Pokemon cards, and you can rent Jurassic Park on any platform. We showed up to film this with the intention of staging something, and Jurassic Park was just on television.
Welcome to Jurassic Park.
Well, my name is Thought Slime. I make what could charitably be called political satire videos from a left-wing perspective. And I have a heavy focus on a lot of anti-fascist content.
I was really excited to talk to you because, one of the elements in this episode that we're talking about is these like occasionally viral tweets. Like most recently, there was that one that's like the kids, playing N64, and there's like the Game Boy and the meatballs and like the Last Action Hero poster, and it's like one of those like this is what they've taken from us. And you made a video several years ago actually kind of talking about this evil fucking thing that's happened where it's like nostalgia has somehow become this cudgel of the right.
Nostalgia has always been a cudgel of the right. Like it is a hallmark of the kind of proto-fascist narrative that there's this idealized past that you've been humiliated and the enemy has taken from you. And it's just that like in the past, this was used to describe historical events or wars and conflicts between nation states. But most of the people who are using this narrative now tend to come from like countries that don't have a lot of grievances with other countries. They tend to be the most powerful countries, America, Canada, the UK, places like that. You can't really blame your problems so much on like an imposition by a foreign power. So you have to be a bit more creative with what exactly it is they have taken from you. And in this case, it seems to be the ability to consume media without thinking critically about it. When you really boil down, that is what they are mad about. Because in all of those memes, you'll notice the thing they're saying, this is what they took from you. It isn't that like any of this went away. The thing that they're saying went away is this kind of attitude towards media that it's like an uncritical good that they had when they were children and that they've grown out of as adults, and fear that it might complicate like the happy memories they have of things they enjoyed as a kid. That's what they're afraid of.
Like there's this disconnect a little bit between I really like Jurassic Park, and I have nostalgia for N64. Like CRT gaming, like I get it. It's not necessarily like my thing, but I kind of understand it. Are you able to sort of separate those things and say like I can be nostalgic for stuff that I grew up for without it making me like a fucking fascist, I guess, I
don't want to give anyone the impression that I think that like because you like things from the past, you are therefore some sort of reactionary. My like channel branding is all based on like a 90s TV program from Canada. I have no problem with the idea of nostalgia or using the aesthetic of nostalgia. You could see it everywhere, like just like, pixel art video games and shit like that. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's specifically this idea that the reason things have changed is because there is some nefarious third party that is deliberately changing them in order to weaken the body politic. This is the dangerous myth at the heart of like Comicsgate, Gamergate, all these like, you know, shitheads that are mad that they put a black person in Star Wars. It's always that grievance.
This is just a classic tactic in the modern day culture of complaint. Taking things that basically everyone enjoys or remembers enjoying and making them some political wedge. And in any event, the whole CRT revival isn't just about some starry-eyed wish to return to the past. It's about building a new, lively community of old things.
There's a solid amount of research out there to indicate that sharing your nostalgic feelings with others, like just getting together and reminiscing, is actually very pro-social. It pulls people kind of out of their shell, maybe who are more shy. It feels really good, and it makes people relatively happy, which is very different from the normative discussion of nostalgia as this extremely backward kind of feeling that gets in the way of progress and all of that, which is, you know, at times very true. Those of us who live in the United States over the past few years and have paid attention to political rhetoric, we know that like nostalgia can absolutely be used in that way. I have a Super Nintendo console hooked up to my TV downstairs. I play Super Mario World. I played it growing up. I still play it. It's in good condition. I have an emulator that plays like old Pokemon games on it. And I do that because I just like it. And yeah, I mean, it kind of like feels like the old days a little bit, you know? I don't necessarily miss those old days, you know? I don't like want to be a kid again, but the experience is honestly, at the very least, a departure from like high definition digital streaming, but it does have the potential to make some people relatively uncomfortable knowing they can't, quote, ever get back there. And I think something like CRT gaming kind of helps to manage that tension a little bit, to say, okay, yes, maybe I can't live in that context of the past anymore, but I can go and make this purchase, in some cases really expensive purchase, to get this old TV, hook up and play it, and you know, it's better than nothing, and it doesn't really hurt anybody in the long term. And in fact, it might even like build a kind of community with others that has the potential to do that.
There's a genuine community here that extends outside of the digital space of games or the internet into the real flesh and blood meat world, where people connect at flea markets and yard sales, scouring for deals on Zeniths and Trinitrons. For them, the past isn't always some unrecoverable era lost to memory. It's on the side of the road on garbage day, or on a Craigslist ad, or an eBay listing. Engaging with this past does not need to create some regressive ache for the days when people still left plates of canned spaghetti and meatballs festering on the rec room floor, or when Donkey Kong wasn't woke or whatever. It's about enjoying simpler pleasures, and about the concept of medium specificity or even aesthetic purity not having some creepy conservative political valence. Will weirdos always try to politicize Metroid or Super Mario? Sure, they literally love doing this, because this sort of wildly annoying culture war shit works. It keeps people on YouTube and Twitter yelling at each other and juicing ad revenue while shifting the Overton window of political conversation into increasingly irrelevant territory, but only if we let it. You don't have to buy into it. Just because you like the same stuff as losers does not make you a loser by association. You can spend time and effort and crazy sums of money to play old games just because you like how they look. Or maybe because they are less punishing than falling off the same fucking cliff over and over and over.
You Carr!